Cassie looked to the sky out the window of the SUV back seat where she was stuffed in with her other traveling companions. Stacked duffel bags and a cooler by her legs had her wedged so close to the window that she frequently got whiffs of new car smell wafting up into her face from the door panels. At the behest of her friend Jen, Cassie had joined a spring break road trip with Jen's friends and Cassie's acquaintances, heading to the Las Vegas Strip to get in on what Cassie had been assured would be the experience of a lifetime. Acquaintances was probably still too nice of a word, as Cassie had frequently, but quietly, been rubbed the wrong way by two of the three other people with them on this road trip. How fun would it be to go to Crazy Eights? Jen's friend Amanda commented, flipping through a brightly colored top 10 article on her phone with one hand while digging through the bag of caramel corn in her lap. She leaned over the center console, craning her neck to look behind her at the other girls in the car. Her light green eyes, framed by a heavy coat of mascara and eyeliner, flitted between Cassie and Jen. She held the phone out, mostly to Jen, and tapped at the screen with a long baby pink fingernail. "Look at that picture. You'd like that, right?" Kyle, Amanda's boyfriend, snorted in derision from behind the wheel of the SUV. "That's those stripper guys, babe. We don't need to see that shit." He lifted a hand from the steering wheel and scratched at the light-colored stubble on his chin, then resituated his baseball cap over his blonde crew cut. "I wasn't talking to you," Amanda sighed, brushing some dark brown bangs out of her face. "I was thinking maybe Jen or Cassie might want to come with me." "Sure," Jen chimed in all too quickly. Cassie's gaze snapped to Jen, who sat wedged towards the window on the passenger's side and didn't make eye contact with her. Given what Cassie had observed of Amanda and Kyle to date, she couldn't imagine where Jen derived the desire to be this agreeable to Amanda. As far as she knew, a striptease was the last thing Jen would have normally been interested in, but this was only her latest point of confusion. After seeing over the past few days the way Jen tended to interact with both Amanda and Kyle, Cassie was beginning to feel like she didn't know her friend that well anymore. Cassie glanced briefly to her right, trying not to stare too much at the young man sleeping in the back between herself and Jen. His name was Michael, and though Cassie had seen him a few times before in the company of Amanda and Kyle, she'd never spent any prolonged time around him. She knew him to be a childhood friend of Kyle's, and one of the few people Kyle ever seemed to listen to, though in her modest opinion they didn't seem to have that much in common. He was weird, as Kyle liked to remind him, but Cassie quietly thought different to be the preferential term. Where Cassie would describe Kyle as being constantly on edge, Michael had an air of calm about him and an authority when he spoke that ran counter to the blustery dealings of Kyle or Amanda. Cassie shyly examined Michael from her seat. He had curly brown hair that fell at his shoulders, fair skin, and dressed as though, according to Amanda, he'd gone to the thrift store and looked for the most beat-up clothing he could find, then threw that f***ing trench coat over it. The trench coat, a staple in Michael's wardrobe that Cassie had never seen him without, was the target of frequent jabs from Amanda in particular. Michael seemed unbothered by these kinds of remarks, thankfully. If he hadn't been, the trip so far would have likely been 10 times more dramatic. "What about you, Cass?" Amanda asked, applying a nickname Cassie had yet to approve, but that Amanda seemed to tack on to every question where she wanted Cassie's allegiance. Cassie stammered, wrinkling her nose at the buff, glistening stripper on Amanda's phone. "Sure, I guess." Her gaze flitted up to where Michael's head lay rolled back against the seat. Face pointed to the ceiling as he slept, arms folded to his chest. This must have betrayed her interest to Amanda, unfortunately. "Maybe Michael would like to go with us," Amanda jeered. Cassie felt herself starting to flush and was wondering if she should respond in the defense or stead of the sleeping Michael. However, he revealed he apparently hadn't been sleeping at all when he answered, "Sure." Much to Cassie's silent satisfaction, the jeering grin fell from Amanda's face. Whatever, man, laughed Kyle. It's not like we're actually going to this place anyway. A brief flicker of disappointment crossed Amanda's face, but she said nothing. Where are we going in Las Vegas? Cassie quickly interjected. Dunno, shrugged Kyle. First night we'll probably just drive the strip for a while, see what's there. Something cool will probably turn up. Michael sat upright and glanced absently around the cab of Kyle's SUV. Cassie watched Jen shift in her seat, edging towards the window on her side, tugging nervously at the end of her auburn ponytail. Michael reached into one of his trench coat pockets and produced a large black cigarette lighter. Cassie was wondering if he was planning to smoke in the car, but was even more confused when he opted to just stare at the lighter, turning it over and over in his hands. Michael evidently caught her staring and turned to her with a sly grin. Hey, Cassie, check this out. He carefully extended the hand with the lighter in it so that it lined up with the gap between the front seats and held down the trigger. Instead of producing a tiny flame from the spout on the other side, close to 5 inches of aggressive flame shot out, extending up towards the roof of Kyle's car. Both Cassie and Jen jumped in their seats, instinctively moving away from the flame. Michael remained fixated on the lighter with amusement and pride all over his face. "Watch this," he said. He lifted his thumb from the lighter, and the flame stayed going for a few more seconds despite having no pressure on the trigger. When it finally faded, Michael grinned at Cassie. "I tweaked it a little. What do you think?" "Man, you better not be starting up with that pyro shit again," Kyle barked from the driver's seat before Cassie could even think of a response. "This is a brand new car, and if you damage any part of it, I'm gonna pull over and kick your ass." Michael shrugged and put the lighter back in his pocket. Kyle turned to Amanda. "How far away are we, babe?" "I think like a couple hours," said Amanda. "Could you get out your phone? I didn't ask for a fucking estimate." Amanda visibly tensed, shoulders drawing up as she reached into her purse. She pulled her phone up to her face and scanned the screen. 3 hours. "Great," grunted Kyle. "Okay, everyone keep your eyes out for the next off-ramp. I gotta take a piss." Cassie's gaze returned to the back seat, where Jen seemed lost in thought and Michael was presently studying a small antique compass he'd also produced from his coat. He briefly glanced at Cassie and flashed a friendly smirk that made her heart jump in her chest. She watched him turn the compass over in his hands, softly running his thumb around the edges. "There's a rest stop coming up," Jen announced, peering ahead from her side of the car. "Perfect," said Kyle. "Everybody hold tight." Kyle took the car onto the off-ramp and barreled into the rest stop parking lot, narrowly missing another car trying to pull out. He slid the car into the closest open spot to the restrooms, yanked the keys out of the ignition, and hopped out. "Anybody else need to go?" Cassie shook her head. "I think I'm going to stretch my legs," said Amanda. "Anybody else?" She turned an expectant gaze on Jen and Cassie. "I might go check out the scenery," said Michael. Cassie turned to look out at the flat, barren landscape, peppered with the occasional sagebrush, taking far too long to register that this had been sarcasm. "I'll go," Jen chirped happily. "Come on, Cassie." With some reluctance, Cassie unclipped her seatbelt. Jen ran around to her side and opened the door for her, eyebrows raised in an impatient, "Come on" type of expression. Cassie slid out of her seat and onto her feet on the worn asphalt of the parking lot, feeling the strange sensations that accompanied the blood coming back to her legs. "You coming too?" Amanda called into the car at Michael, who had just placed his feet on the center console and was doing his best to find a more relaxing position in the back seat. "Nah, I'm good. You guys go ahead." Jen shut the door soundly, and the three of them embarked on their modest expedition around the rest stop. They passed a family unloading from a minivan, carrying fast food trash to the nearby garbage can. All members of this family were on the heavier side, prompting Amanda to mutter snidely to Jen, "How many cheeseburgers do you think each of them had?" To Cassie's surprise, Jen snickered back. Cassie frowned and made a point of looking away when Amanda turned to see how her joke had been received on the back lines. They passed an older couple playing with a small dog on what little grass there was in the rest area, and a sunburned lady in a wide-brimmed hat. Something in those sights resulted in another snide remark from Amanda, this time whispered to Jen, quieter than Cassie could hear. Amanda stopped in her tracks, clapping Jen on the shoulder as she gazed straight ahead like she'd just spotted her favorite animal in a zoo enclosure. "Oh my God," she said in a low voice. Hi, this is Valen. I hope you've enjoyed this reading of The Wrong Ones, a 6-chapter horror novella. The full book is available as an ebook on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I will say this is my first time doing any kind of narration like this. I would actually be interested in releasing the book in more formats. Right now it's available as an ebook. I'd be interested in releasing it as an audiobook, but I'd be looking for feedback specifically on how this went, how the recording sounded, if you enjoyed this. So leave a like, a comment, let me know. That would be great. And again, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.